Complete the proof. We're given that VW is congruent to XY. Make sure that's marked in the picture, and it is. We're also given that WX is congruent to YV. Now, these pictures have these triangles touching, so I want us to look at that for a minute before we even get into the proof. Let's just see if we think they're congruent before we start writing a proof, especially if our proof was blank. We would need to look at the picture and decide how we were going to go about proving that they were congruent. So in this picture, these triangles, they're touching. They share this side right here. They've already used 1 mark and 2 marks, so we can use 3 markings to mark that side as being congruent to itself. And I'm looking at these and I'm noticing that all 3 sides are marked in one triangle and all 3 sides are marked in another. So I know that this is going to be side, side, side for the reason why the triangles are congruent. So now let's look at the proof. The first statement from given is here in the proof. So we're going to write given for the reason there. The second thing that's given is here in the proof, so we're going to write given again. Now, we've got to label this part in there where they share that side, and remember that if they share a side like this, you name it congruent to itself, which I know that seems silly, but you'll see that a lot anytime they share a side, and the reason is the reflexive property. And then now they're saying that the triangles are congruent, and I don't know, nobody would name it wrong. When you're writing a proof, you're not going to name it one way and then change how you name it. So this line really makes no sense in this proof. So I'm whiting that out because you're not going to do that in your proof. You're going to name it right the first time, especially because they tell you how to name it. So there's no way you're going to name it wrong because you're just going to copy how they name it. So we have our 3 sides in our proof, so we had to make sure, 1, 2, 3, all 3 are in there. And then we're able to say that they're congruent by side, side, side. So there's no need for that 4th line that was on there. Sorry about that. Just mark that part out. Here's another proof. And we are given that BE is congruent to BC. That's marked. We are given that angle A is congruent to angle D, and that's marked. This is that bow tie picture I was talking about earlier, where these triangles are touching and they make this bow tie, and anytime you have the bow tie picture, you have vertical angles. So I'm going to mark those. I've already used one, or they've already used 1 mark in this picture, so we need to use 2 marks. So now I notice that I've got 2 angles, excuse me, and a side, and the side's not between these 2 angles. So when I get to the end, I know that I've got 2 angles and the side not in the middle, so we put the S on the end. Notice that this proof is totally blank, so now we're getting to the point where we're writing a proof from scratch, which is going to be important for our test. So going to the proof, my first line, you could put these together or you could list them separately. It really doesn't matter. Since we've been listing them separately, I guess I'll list them separately. BE congruent to BC given, and then angle A congruent to angle D given, and then we had those vertical angles was what we noticed. So when you're naming these, there's too many angles at B, so you can't just call it angle B. So I'm going to say ABE. Remember that B, the vertex goes in the middle. When you name an angle congruent to, since I started at A that had 1 mark, I'm going to start at D, DBC. You could call it CBD and it would not be wrong. It would still be just fine. But I like to name it in corresponding, like since these angles match, I like to name them sort of in the same way. It helps me when I get to write my triangle congruence. Kind of helps me practice that. So my reason for that, remember, was vertical angles are congruent. And now we've got both of our angles and our side listed in our proof, so we know it's time that we can say that the triangles are congruent, which is the last statement right here. Sorry, my allergies. So we've got the order that it needs to be named in, so let's just name it here, ABE, congruent to triangle DBC. And we already decided based on the picture that the reason would be angle, angle, side. So now we've done a proof from scratch, just using our given and what we could tell from the picture, and completed our proof.